Good evening. This is Thomas Robert Simpson here with AfroSolo TV. We're brought to you by the AfroSolo Theater Company that presents an annual jazz festival every August. This year will take place on August 1st in Yerba Buena Gardens here in San Francisco. We have a very exciting lineup of artists who will be performing that night. And we happen to have one of those artists here tonight for our interview. His name is Mr. Frank Jackson. As I like to do with AfroSolo TV, is not say a whole lot about our artist, but allow them to speak for him or herself. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Mr. Frank Jackson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
It is so nice to have you here because you're a legend. And as we talk a little bit, I'd like for our audience to know a little bit about you, but also find out a little bit about the old San Francisco, the Harlem of the West, the Fillmore of the older days. And we want you to bring us up until today. But before we get started with that, what I'd like to ask you is, where are you from?
I'm from Texas.
You're from Texas? What city?
A little town called Cleburne.
Cleburne, Texas.
Right out of Fort Worth, about 30 miles, 32 miles from Fort Worth.
From Fort Worth? Well, that's great. And when did you come to San Francisco?
In 1942.
As you were growing up, do you remember how you got your start in music?
I think probably from my dad.
Was he?
My dad played guitar. He wasn't a professional musician, but he was without the credentials.
With all the fanfare.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what type of guitar did he play? Was he like Delta blues, Texas blues? Was he jazz, gospel?
He played gospel. He played some blues. During that time, they called it Mexican music.
Okay.
Because you had all of that there in Texas.
Sure. And you grew up listening to that.
Listening to that. And in church, I listened to the piano players. And that's how I fell in love with the piano.
Now, do you remember the first time you took a lesson, or how did you learn to play?
From one of the women in church who played.
Mm-hmm. How did she know that you were interested?
Because I was always right under him, right there, looking over her shoulder, watching her play when I had a chance to.
Wow. And what age were you then?
Oh, I was maybe 10 or 11.
Wow. Once you moved to San Francisco, you took more classes, or did you take classes you just learned from doing?
Classes. I had a private teacher, and I also played for the kids. There were several of us who played piano, and I had a friend named Tommy Smith, and we used to play for parties, teenage parties, with dual pianos.
Wow.
And it was a lot of fun. So
wow.
we were the band. We played.
And what kind of music were you playing then?
We were playing boogie woogie, popular stuff too.
In terms of learning that music, was it all by music, or did you play by ear?
No, both.
A little bit of both?
I got some of it from that, but I had a natural talent for music, and I learned a lot of things from radio. I got a lot of music and a lot of songs from listening to the radio.
This year for the festival, the vocalist is, we're showcasing vocalist also. So you're also a vocalist.
Yes, I'll be doing both.
When did you, I know you, at an early age you started the piano. When did you start singing?
I started singing first.
Oh, okay. Was that in church or at home, or where?
Both.
Wow. Now, your father was a guitar player.
Yes.
Was your mother musically inclined?
Sing. The whole family could sing. I had 3 sisters and a brother. And my brother played piano, and he played in church sometimes. We used to, he'd play things for me, and I'd play some things from him, that I would get from him.
Yeah. As you were younger, who were some of the people that you admired?
Oh, Earl Father Hines. I loved him. Nat King Cole was one of my idols. I couldn't understand how Nat could play and sing like that. He sounded like an orchestra behind himself.
Yes.
Playing and singing. And I had the pleasure of meeting him.
Your father, I'm assuming that he may have passed on by now.
Yes.
How far in his career did he go?
Well, one, he was a church deacon.
Okay. All right.
And he did what they called then cabaret. He and my mother would cabaret.
Wow.
Dad would play and my mother would sing.
Wow. So you moved here to San Francisco, and you got involved with the music scene here.
My first job as a pianist, I worked at the YMCA on Buchanan Street.
Really?
Yeah,
It's
that
still
was in
there.
Fillmore.
It's still there.
It's still there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I worked. I had a trio.
Mm-hmm.
Junior Simmons, who's a minister now, and he has a church on Fillmore Street.
Wow.
And we're in close contact. And there was a bass player, Walt Sanford. His father worked for the mayor during that time, and that's where we first joined the Musicians Union, because we put on dances there and sponsored them and raised funds and did it ourselves.
Wow.
So they sent a representative there from the union,
Mm-hmm.
and they scared us and said, so we joined the union. They let us join the union.
And what was your age?
I was 16.
Wow. Since you've been playing here, you've played with a number of the legends. Some of the legends who are local, such people as the Alleys.
Both of them, Vernon and Eddie.
When did you meet them? Do you remember?
I met them in the early 50s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you had a close relationship all the way up, through their lives.
Wait for the rest of their lives.
Now, a few years ago, there was a photograph taken of a lot of the jazz musicians here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes.
I think it was shot down at City Hall.
Yes.
Were you part of that?
Yes, I was there.
What was that like?
That was nice. There were a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm on that.
It's sort of a takeoff of a photograph that was shot in New York.
In New York,
You
yes.
know, I don't know if it was in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, but showcasing a lot of the artists who were there at that time.
That was legendary, that one from New York.
Yes.
Where Count Basie was sitting there
Yes.
with all those kids around.
Yes. And so San Francisco sort of had its own version,
Yes.
the West Coast version, and you were one of the premier artists that's a part of that. Do you remember that day? How was that set up? Did someone just call you and say, "We want to take a picture. Could you show up?" How did that happen?
It was set up ahead of time. We were notified,
Mm-hmm.
and so we had to get there early.
Mm-hmm.
So they arranged where you were sitting. And
Did you know who the other artists were going to be?
I knew most of them.
Okay.
Not just from that, but word got around and everybody came. Some people came from out of town,
Mm-hmm.
and it was every time you look around, somebody was hugging somebody, and everybody was smiling. It was a very warm day. It was beautiful.
Your voice, your legendary, smooth sounding voice, where did it come from?
Well, I guess probably from my family,
Mm-hmm.
but I've always loved music. I've listened to many artists, and I learned songs that way. And of Nat, I love the way he phrased and the way he sang. I used to mimic him more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I guess I grew into my way of doing what I
Your
do.
style. Because you said earlier that you wondered how Nat King Cole could sing and play and sound like an orchestra at the same time. And now you can do it.
I was talking to an older musician at that time, and I said that to him. He says, "You're doing that now." He says, "You're doing that."
Wow.
And
Wow.
I don't know. I just didn't realize how much I was getting together with.
Mm-hmm.